It was good. One of my landowner clients came.
Okay.
Not so sure about it.
I was surprised it's enough.
Good evening.
How many or how?
How many you got? No, you and Patrick. Happy about that.
Great.
Mike, are we live? Thank you. Good evening and welcome to Gates Mills Town Hall. This town hall meeting is on the topic of land conservation and its related levy. Our purpose tonight is to inform our residents on land conservation topics and to listen to their viewpoints and their questions. Much has changed since our conversation on conservation 5 years ago. The topics that are covered in conservation now are much broader. The reach of what we're doing is much deeper, and frankly, the relationships that we have between the Land Conservancy, the village, and outside organizations is impressive and collaborative. You likely have read about some of the initiatives that we've had over the last 2 or 3 years. You've heard about the Tree Canopy Committee, about the 4 pilot projects to address and eradicate invasive vegetation in the village, and the Garden Club-led effort to restore the Arboretum to its origin as a wildflower preserve. That latter initiative starts with the removal of the invasives and the overgrown trees. These activities have been led by the village in most cases. Some had participation by the Gates Mills Land Conservancy. Some had participation by other partners, many of which are sitting at this table. 3 years ago, guided by the work of hundreds of villagers through a strategic planning process, the broad community ranked environmental stewardship as one of its top 3 priorities, second only to public safety. Council adopted those 3 strategic priorities each year, and the administration then organizes our efforts and our resources with activities that support the environmental stewardship priority. The conservation work you will hear about tonight is a direct and intentional result of that process. Said differently, we didn't just fall into invasives or into tree planting. Rather, we broadened the reach of the conservation and preservation to work diligently on important environmental topics beyond just land acquisition. We brought together a panel of experts on these topics. They'll each present for no more than 3 to 5 minutes tonight. And the people here today, sitting at this table, know Gates Mills well. Every one of them has worked alongside us for several years in whatever that topic is. Modestly, I think people see the village as a model of best practices of how a municipality should execute environmental stewardship. And I think some of our experts may comment on that. The second purpose of the meeting tonight is to listen to the residents' point of views and their questions. Tom Barris will moderate our meeting tonight, calling on speakers, directing Q&A, and being the time cop. Tom has over 2 decades of experience as a leading Cleveland newscaster, journalist, and reporter. He's well qualified to lead tonight's session. And Tom, thank you for giving up your evening to be with us this evening and moderate this town hall. We also have in the audience several council members. They may wish to express their own views. We chose to not have any council member at the panel so as to not provide any kind of a slant one way or another. This is a session to provide information and to listen to people's questions. In the first half of the meeting, we'd like to focus on the broad topic of land conservation and preservation and the levy. The levy provides dollars to the village. At that point, it's the village's role to allocate those dollars and to utilize those funds. The use can include engaging outside resources and organizations as council sees fit. In the second half of the meeting, we'll introduce the Gates Mills Land Conservancy's role in the environmental stewardship. 2 of their leaders will address the topics that are in the agenda section 4 during that second half session. At this point, it's my pleasure to turn the meeting over to Tom, who will be responsible for the balance of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Good evening, everybody, both those here and perhaps watching online over dinner. I'd just like to say thanks very much for the opportunity to drive from the other side of the world in Rocky River over to discover or rediscover your beautiful community here and maybe get to use big words like idyllic, pastoral, and bucolic. Glad to be in your little piece of paradise for a while here. So let's just start with a little show of hands survey to sort of get the lay of the land, pun partially intended. So if the vote on the levy were tonight, how many of you know 100% dead bang certain that you would vote for it? Please show of hands. Okay. Likewise, flip side, how many of you know that you would likely vote against the prospective levy? Okay. How many of you are really kind of aren't sure and think you need some more information to make a thoughtful, educated decision on what to do? Okay. So this is what we're going to try to do. We're going to try and provide enlightenment, more light than heat, hopefully, in the discussion. Just a request that everybody stay calm and fact-based and respectful. And again, hopefully we can actually get some sort of a dialogue and discussion going. Getting back to my questions there, how many of you think maybe it's time to have a community discussion on whether we should re-examine or you should re-examine the relationship between the village and the conservancy? And is there a better way to do the same thing? Okay. All right, so I would ask all of the experts and presenters here to not get too far off into the weeds, and if possible, don't tell us how to make the watch. Just maybe tell us how it works and how it's been working. And we're not going to have like a military timekeeping sort of function here. If I sense that maybe we're drifting a little too far off, I'll try to steer things back. We're going to have a timeout probably between items number, let me check the dance card here, between items 3 and 4. I think 2 hours is an awful long time to sit and digest and assimilate all that. So have a timeout maybe to stretch or make a pit stop if need be. So we are now going to get into areas of specialization and pitch it back to the mayor to discuss village priority and the role of environmental stewardship and what the village's role is in that.
I covered much of that in my opening remarks, and so in the interest of time, I'm going to turn it to Mitch Bass here, who chairs the Tree Canopy Committee and has been active with all of our environmental initiatives in the last 2 years. Mitch?
Everybody, Mitch Bass, Chair of the Canopy Committee here in the village, also on the Land Conservancy Board as a mayoral appointee. When I moved to the village 2018, the property I purchased was heavily wooded. There was a tree cut on the property that was not approved by the village, and the invasives had moved in and taken over my entire property. So I took a heavy interest in learning about land management and conservation stewardship and all that kind of stuff. The parcel I also bought has a deed restriction from the Land Conservancy, so I learned about that and the inspections, which got me interested in the village. And the mayor approached me 2 years ago after kind of learning about some of the work I was doing myself and asked if I would chair this committee. And so many of the individuals sitting here, I worked with completely independently, just trying to figure out how to take care of my property and what that looked like and what actual assets I had, which I think is an important point for us in the village is, and the community spoke, these are what we have here. And the reason I moved here is because of the assets that we all see and that even Tom brought up. And I think, we may not all necessarily look at them the same way, but ultimately these are assets just for our environment and our community. And so, we've taken on a lot of projects through the pilot, as many of you know. I've been to council several times to present different discussion points and things like that. So one, I think, important topic that I would like to bring up, at least it's been discussed in the community that I've seen in council meetings and other postings and things like that, is kind of the money allocation side. And some of the experts can also speak about it, but these are big projects and we have a lot of acreage to cover and we have a lot of work to do here. We've done a lot, but there's still a lot to do. And I think this isn't a 3 or 5 year program where you just come in and do stuff. This is 50, 60, 100 years worth of work that we're trying to accomplish in steps. And, the dollars that are currently sitting, at least at the village, that the mayor has asked us to present on and do projects with has been talked about as a large number. And I think, and you can ask any of these experts, 2 years ago, we presented a 3-year budget program to council, and there was, of course, the budget has to be approved every year, but there's roughly $487,000 sitting at the village now, and $150,000 of that is going to be spent within the next 6 or 8 months on projects that we kicked off as part of the pilot and expanded it. And as part of the initial initiative, year 3 will take about the same amount of dollars. So that $487,000 that's there is mostly already earmarked for conservation projects and stewardship within the village to continue the pilot. We're up over 100 acres of work that Brian and his team have taken on, and we're continuing to expand that. Our goal, which we have the budget available that anyone, happy to share with, we put together a 10-year running budget that about 40 acres every single year would be added on to the Tree Canopies Committee of Management of the expanded pilot if we, decide to keep going with all this. And so the dollars are really well accounted for. And part of the split that the mayor has brought up about 80-20 was driven around continuing to provide the correct funding on a budget schedule, sort of a waterfall budget schedule, to continue not only managing the properties that are within that sort of 3-year cycle, but as new properties come on and other properties drop off, continuing, which would then cover the entire village within the next 10 years or so. So that was kind of my intro and background on where and how we've gotten here. I don't know if we're doing specific questions now or.
Yeah, Terry, do we want to?
Acreage.
So why don't we do our presentation?
Okay.
And then we'll get the questions, because other people may have similar ones too. Okay? So the Tree Canopy Committee is a part of council. It's not part of the Gates Mills Land Conservancy. It's one of current council's arms to oversee all the funds that come in from the levy and have specific responsibility for some of the initiatives that the village does on its properties. So, for example, the Arboretum is a village property. Work that we may do there to eliminate invasives and to clean out dead and rotten trees, okay, do not fall under the Land Conservancy. They fall under responsibility of the village, and that responsibility is essentially managed on a day-to-day basis by the Tree Canopy Committee. So there's not, people may need to know what that is. Let me see if I could ask Adam Beekler to talk about the pilot program and how we started those 4 sites 2 years ago. We've now had 2 applications on them, with the third to come, if I have my notes right, and what he sees in terms of that being a catalyst for other invasive remediation we want to do. Adam?
My name's Adam Beekler. I'm a certified forester and natural resource manager in Northeast Ohio, and have been for over 20 years. I've been working with Gates Mills on a number of different projects for probably maybe upwards of 10 years now. But I was approached a few years ago about this project specifically. And I guess when I was told that there was essentially levy money to deal with environmental issues, I guess maybe shocked is a good way to put it, because that's just, quite frankly, not normal. It's unique, and I think it's pretty special that the community had dedicated themselves to that measure to deal with some of these things. But essentially, what I was brought forth to do was, we've got the ability to do this. Now we need a plan. So we had the Village of the Tree Canopy Committee had identified potential properties that might fit the bill. And we had discussions on which properties would be important, why they would be important. But the next step was, how do we actually accomplish this? So I came up with essentially an action plan, and then we evaluated the properties to identify any number of forest health issues and environmental health issues that might be there, might be prevalent, and then developed forest stewardship plans for each one of those properties to essentially lay out the problems that we found, why they're problems, how extensive they are, and the steps that need to be taken in order to remedy those issues. And the main issues that we're running into is, I'll just give a brief synopsis of what an invasive species is. Essentially what that is a species that's come here from another part of the world that doesn't have any natural competitors in our environment. Typically, they can grow uncontrolled. They reduce native plant diversity. They reduce native tree diversity. At high densities, they can interrupt natural forest processes. So they can be very detrimental to environmental health. And that's sort of what started driving the thought process on, hey, this is what we need to focus on initially on some of these properties. Is the invasive species issues that you guys have in Gates Mills are extensive. And it's not something that is unique to Gates Mills. It is a problem across the northeast part of the country. It's probably one of the biggest issues that we're facing with our environment over the next few decades. And the fact that you guys have the ability to deal with these issues is amazing, for one thing, because the environment gets neglected a lot when we start talking about levy monies. But beyond that, the fact that you guys were doing this has been noticed by other communities around here. And they are starting to think, hey, we need to do this as well to improve the environment, essentially maintain what we have. So the Land Conservancy's done a wonderful job of conserving grounds around here. It's pretty special. You guys live in Cleveland, but it's sort of got a rural feel around here. Now that the land is protected, it needs to be taken care of. And there's some serious environmental health issues going on, and you guys have the ability to take care of it. And it's not something that can be remedied over a year or two. It's something that takes persistence and maintenance. And if we don't take care of it, it will slowly fade.
Could you give a specific example of maybe a particular invasive species that's terribly detrimental, has made great encroachment, and how you get rid of it or control it or eradicate it?
So there is quite a few that are here, but the most shocking and prevalent one that I've seen that we don't see a whole lot of other places other than Cuyahoga County is something called porcelain berry. It is a vine that blankets everything. The kudzu is the famous one that is in Tennessee and Kentucky, and it grows like kudzu. When I first started looking at it, I was like, "Is that kudzu? I've never seen anything this detrimental." It's porcelain berry, and the way to kill any number of invasive species is by one of a number of different ways of herbicide treatment, and it is essentially the only way to get rid of these invasive species.
Tom, if I can just quickly introduce Brian Cook, because Brian and his company, Better Meadows and Woodlands, has been hired by the village to do the 4 pilot programs. Adam works with Brian, but Adam works primarily and reports primarily to the village as our eyes and ears to make sure that contractors that are hired with either village money or conservation money are doing the right work. So Brian's doing the hard work of the hard hats and the sprays and so on the 4 pilot programs and the ones that we have going on this year for phase 2. Are we done with year 2? And year 3 will start when?
Year 3 will start next growing season. But yeah, essentially, I don't know if we're completely finished with year 2, but we're getting close.
So eradicating invasives is not a one spray operation. It's a 3-year, 3 application process. And again, as was said a few minutes ago, we started with 4 pilots. We're going to continue those pilots in year 2 and year 3, and hopefully add 40 to 50 acres every year so that over a 10-year period, we'll have all the land conservancy and all of the village-owned properties eradicated with invasives. Brian, anything you wanted to add? I just want to make sure we keep the time rolling.
One thing that I do want to add, and it goes along with some of the stuff Adam was saying, is we work all across the state, all across the region, and our work at Gates Mills comes up a lot. As Adam said, it's definitely not the norm to have residents that take ownership of their, not just their property, but their whole community. I've talked about Gates Mills to the Boy Scouts, the Division of Wildlife, even a few private landowners will have heard about it and will bring it up. And I think that that's one of the most important things to note here, is that the work that you guys have enabled to be accomplished in your community is very, very exceptional.
So are you saying that this is one of a kind, and if not unique, extraordinary?
Yeah, I have yet to, we've dealt with some municipalities and communities, but never on this scale. It's a privilege to be a part of this community and to contribute in our way. But it's rejuvenating work. Coming here and doing this work is, some of the stuff we do, we might be in and out and we never get to go back to a property, but being involved in this for the last couple of years is a project that our company is very, very proud of, just to be a part of.
So you're saying other cities actually look at Gates Mills and say, how are they doing that, and how can we emulate them?
Yep, and not just cities, agencies, whether it's a Metro Parks, and I guess that's another thing, the work that the village has done. Metro Parks are in the process of starting some work, so it might not grow as fast as the invasives do, but it's something that's definitely growing and spreading across the region.
Just to jump on that, the regional forestry director for our area from the Metro Parks is here, and Josh, if you want to at least rate, yep. Yep. Yeah, so Josh comes with a lot of experience. He's walked a lot of acreage within this village. As we know, the second or third largest landowner in the village is the Cleveland Metro Parks. And we've developed a really good relationship with them, and they're now actually diverting resources from other properties and other areas that they were going to be spending on. And because of the work we're doing adjacent to their properties, they're actually now spending their own money taking care of significant portions of acreage adjacent to our properties because of the work that Gates Mills has done. Just this year, they're going to do approaching 30 acres of woodland management at the River Road Mayfield intersection, which we all know is a really bad area. And then coming over the river, there's a small parcel, and then heading north to the Sherman area. That whole section is going to be in process of getting cleaned up. So.
All right, next up, I believe we'll hear from John Keene from the Ohio Department of Natural Resources to talk about urban forestry and how it dovetails and fits into the big picture here in Gates Mills.
Okay, thank you all for inviting me here. I've got a long history with the Gates Mills community. As he said, my name is John Keene. I'm a service forester. We work with private landowners. I'm the service forestry coordinator for the Northern Ohio Foresters. Cuyahoga County is my service county. We help landowners navigate everything from forest health issues, property tax reduction programs, federal cost share programs that are available to landowners, and timber harvesting, try to teach people how to do that the correct way. So our job is education. And I'll just tell you, I started with this council years ago, and we had landowners who were in the tax reduction programs, but if you're not, we also had you guys also had an ordinance that wouldn't allow them to cut timber. The two don't mix. You can't be in the programs if you won't cut timber. So the first council meeting I came to, I kind of thought I was going to get thrown out. Because I said, well, all these people are going to lose their tax break because we can't have them in our program. At the same time, we have the Ohio Forest Tax Law Program under our division umbrella. There is also the agricultural tax rate that the farmers are in, but trees are an ag product. It's called CAUV, the current, excuse me, current agricultural use valuation. There were quite a few landowners in that program, and I work closely with the auditor's offices in all the counties I've ever worked with. And, you know, they had people in the program. The ordinance was prohibitive, and we had to do something about it, or people were going to have to drop out of the program and pay regular tax rate on the market value of their properties, which is high. So that's how I got started here. The previous mayor took me up on my offer to drive the whole council around. I think we met here at 7 o'clock in the morning, no bathroom breaks or anything till 1 o'clock. And we went around and looked at timber sales and forest management on multiple private properties. And what was interesting was, I believe it was Kathy was her name. I'm not 100% sure of that. Karen? Karen, okay. Well, I remember meeting them just up the road here on a private landowner that I was poking the bear, and I marked the timber. And I said, I want you to come look. And they did. They didn't go in the woods. They stood on the driveway. And I explained to them, this was prior to our tour. I explained to them, you know, why I marked certain trees. The next day, Karen calls me and says, I want to go on that tour. And I said, what changed your mind? And she said, driving in the village today, I see all these potential liabilities and all these problems. I said, okay, well, let's start the learning process. We did that. We rewrote an ordinance, which is much more conducive to forest management. And then that's kind of the last thing I did in here for a while, until I found out that they had passed a levy, collected some funds to do forestry work. And most of this was through Mitch had done some private work and gotten in one of the cost share programs, and I had assisted with that. And it was going well, and it surprised him. I don't think you were into forest management before that. And so, you know, we just kind of progressed from there. I told the canopy committee when they formed, because they called to say, what do we do with this money? We've got this money. We don't know what's a priority. And so we met, looked around, and invasive species in this community are a disaster. They're a disaster in a lot of places, but they're a disaster. So I told them, look, we need to, again, take some trips around, look at where, like University School was doing a big project. We went and looked at it. I said, you're going to need to be able to explain to the people why everything's turning brown, you know, and what it is and what it looks like for a while. So they did that. And we had several meetings where they did their homework to learn what to do. I was, like Adam said, I was kind of shocked that they passed one in the first place to do this. Nobody else is doing this. No other community is doing this. And I've had the same thing happen. I've had communities call me and say, who's doing anything better than Gates Mills? And I just say, nobody. And they don't like that answer because they're getting jealous. And you might know who they are. Anybody here from Hunting Valley?
Oh, no, you're going to name names, huh? Okay.
But anyway, it's a daunting task you've taken on. Invasive species are just, they're a pain. They're very difficult. And I've got 50 acres, 35 of woods. I fight it every year. I've got a handle on it, but it's an annual thing. If I let it go for 2 or 3 years, it's right back. These plants have a seed base that lasts 10 years in the ground. So there is a maintenance factor if you really want to control it. I know we do the cost share programs, which quite frankly, unless we have a maintenance program to follow it up, they're going to be right back to where they were. And it's going to be it's a lot of farm bill conservancy money that's going to be kind of wasted.
So the funding that you use to work in Gates Mills, is that part of the state budget or does some of that come from the levy?
Yeah, that's all the levy.
Okay.
Yeah, we just, we're funded obviously through the state government, the ODNR Division of Forestry, we are just another division. You guys all heard of parks and wildlife and water, and we've got 13 divisions or something like that. So I'm with the Division of Forestry, again, strictly an educator. And we have, I feel, made great strides in this community, and I hold it up as an example to a lot of people, just because it's unique, and you decided to take something on and improve the village, and let's face it, you're managing it for aesthetics and health, and for native wildlife and just native fauna. The timber sales and things like that are minimal in this scenario. So that's not really a piece of the puzzle.
So there's no state funding at all to maybe offer some overlapping help with some of the same efforts?
Not for municipalities.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Like Rocky River, I was just there last week in the park. It's a disaster. But they're going to have to.
My hometown.
Yes.
Ouch.
They're going, and they know it, and they are going to work on it. But they didn't know really how bad it was until we walked through it. But I asked the question this week of the guy that runs the federal cost share program if Rocky River is eligible, and he said very unlikely for funds. But the other thing we're working on here is with private landowners, there are those funds available to work on their properties. Again, the cost share programs with the federal government are a moving target. Some years they're good, some years they're terrible. They're always cumbersome for the service foresters to navigate because we've only got 24 of us statewide and we get over 1,000 applicants a year. And, each applicant usually applies to do 3 to 5 projects. And we're supposed to rank them all, approve them all as they get done. That's 24 people. It's not very easy. And it takes away from what I feel is our more important work. But that's kind of it in kind of a nutshell.
Okay. All right, John, thanks very much. Next, we'll hear from Jessica Miller McCaskey from the Holden Arboretum, who will talk about engaging residents, making residents smarter, more involved, more aware of what's going on.
Hope so. Thank you, Tom. Thank you for inviting me to participate in tonight. So my name is Jessica Miller McCaskey. I am a forester at Holden Forests and Gardens based out of the Arboretum. So I'm a natural resource professional. I've had the privilege of working in the 3,000 plus natural areas acres on Holden Arboretum's property. And as a part of the Working Woods Initiative at Holden, I work with a team of people to partner with private landowners and also municipalities and conservation groups to meet their goals to steward forests. So this takes the form of extension style education. We've done programs here actually at this building just last year, written resources, and now consulting forestry. And that's all aimed at assisting people to successfully steward their forests. Most of our forested land in Ohio is privately owned, and the mission of the Arboretum to connect people to the value of plants and natural areas and inspire action for healthy communities. It's kind of a no-brainer for us that that would take us outward from our 3,000 acres of natural areas into communities like yours. So part of the backbone of our outward-facing initiatives is our own multi-decade stewardship on our own property and the research behind that. So our long-term studies bear out stark results of what happens when natural land is actively managed, mismanaged, or not managed at all. And what I wanted to really get across tonight is that non-management or letting nature take its course, unfortunately, the science bears out that that results in undesirable conditions, including not only the ravaging of forests by pests, invasion of non-native plants, as we've been talking about, and increasingly damaging storms, but also significant loss of economic value and aesthetic value, as John said. So we also often reference Gates Mills as an example of what communities can do to accomplish natural resource conservation across the borders, across the community. Each individual private landowner can only do so much. So it really is a beacon that we lift up as an example. I had the opportunity to participate in a program last year here, and we wound up surveying. We like to make sure our programming is hitting what people need. I took a look at that survey today. We asked folks who came to this program on caring for their woods what they most valued about the forests in their community and their own land, and what their concerns were. I think about 60% of our participants responded. So the top answers when it came to value were beauty and peace, privacy, and nature conservation. The top concerns were invasive species, by far, was the number one. So it seems as though folks do realize that this is an issue here. Make sure I get this right. I know storms was also one, and insects and disease. So I'm representing Holden Forest and Garden support for the levy today because to meet those goals and to mitigate those threats, you have to put in some effort. As we've been talking about, conservation is not a passive exercise. I've seen it borne out again and again across the landscape, and doing nothing will result, unfortunately, in degraded forests, less beauty, less peace, and lost value. So it seems like this is an investment that is consistent with at least some of the values that I've encountered from my work with private landowners in your community through outreach and through consulting forestry.
All right, well, let's reverse the flow here now. We've heard from a lot of knowledgeable and hands-on experts. So here's the protocol for questions. You have a question, raise your hand. Mr. Mike, the guy that has put all of the technology together for this broadcast, will come and share the mic with you. Please keep your hands up so he can go from person to person. When you make your remarks or ask your questions, please keep it short, concise, and give us your name and your role. Are you a citizen, a business owner, a landowner? What is your role as a stakeholder in all this? So I also have some previously submitted questions here, which you may pick and choose from, and I may throw in one for myself here just for laughs. So. All right, hands up, folks. I'm sure there's people that have an opinion to express or a question to pose. All right, here's a couple, Mike. Gentlemen.
We're splitting. Gene's over here too.
Oh, okay. Gene's already got one. Okay. All right.
Hi, I'm Steve Walensky. I live on Woodstock Road, and I'm a resident. So I have a bird's eye view of Gates Mills because most of you, some of you in this room know, I walk the village a lot with my dog, and I sort of do the route from Cedar Road all the way to Somme, all the way down to River Road, and back around, stop at Addie's Cup to find out what the latest gossip is from Gates Mills. I actually thought tonight, though, we were going to hear about this levy, which I haven't heard one iota, not a word about it. And I need to leave at 7 o'clock, but I just want to make one statement, and that is, as a resident here, I want to have the opportunity to say yay or nay on the levy. It's been in place for a while, from what I understand. I don't know how many years we've had this levy in there. And I don't want Steve, you, or any of the council members to say, we're not even give the residents an opportunity to vote for this thing. So I think, somebody needs to address this here, because I think a lot of people in this room, by the way, I've gotten several calls from people over the last week or so about the levy, some for, some against it. We don't have the opportunity, though, to vote for it. So somebody needs to talk about it, what it means, what the history is, and why we're doing it. So anyway, that's my point of view.
All right, I believe that's going to be addressed in the second half of the program, but Mayor, if you believe some comments are appropriate now, please offer them.
So thank you for the question, Steve. There's two pieces, and it's important to distinguish them. There's the levy, which first has to go on the ballot. And then there's the citizens voting for the levy in November. The process is as follows. Council considers whether they want to put the item on the ballot. That's where we're at now. There's been 2 readings of the proposed language. There's a town hall that we said we'd have, which is now. There'll be a 3rd reading that'll follow over the next several weeks. And that will be council's decision to either put the levy on the ballot or not. That's those 7 people's choice. If the levy goes on the ballot, then there'll be a further discussion about what's the money used for? What's the right allocation? Should the village give the money to the conservancy in an 80-20 formula or some other formula? Should other people be allowed to weigh in on how the levy funds are spent? But you have to get the levy funds in the first place. And the only way to get the levy funds in the first place, if you go that route, is to put it on the ballot. And that is where we're at now. Part of what we put together this morning, not this morning, today, was to give people a sense that if they thought that the conservancy levy was just all going to the conservancy and was going to acquire land, and some would say, geez, we have enough of that. What do we need to spend more money on that for? We wanted to educate the constituents, the residents, that most of the conservation funds that we've used over the last several years have gone for these broader programs, such as the invasives and so on. This is not about storing up money to go acquire land. This is about maintaining and managing and preserving and conserving what we've already done. Sure, we want to have funds available either through the village and or through the conservancy or through private donors if land becomes available and targets that the conservancy manages come to the market. But much of what we're doing, Steve, and others, is not just storing up money for a rainy day. It's actively managing the properties that the conservancy and the village has. And frankly, we're doing it in combination with our neighbors at the Metro Parks in a level and an area that has never been done before. So if anybody on council wants to comment, they're welcome to do that. At this point, it's council's deliberation as to whether they want to put the levy on the ballot. I'll ask any council member at this point if they care to comment.
Okay.
If not, that's...
Might this be auspicious time for the council members who have thoughts about this to speak up? Okay, wait a minute. Let's get a microphone.
You want to let Karen go? If Scott, I'll come to you.
Okay. All right, Councilwoman, identify yourself, please.
Yes, I'm Karen Greco, and I'm a newly elected council person here in Gates Mills. Let me just tell you that this is all wonderful, and the work that the Conservancy does is wonderful. I am not against the Land Conservancy. I want to say that again. I am not against the Land Conservancy. What I am against is tax dollars used to fund their mission. They should be able to, if their mission is grand as it is, to raise dollars from all of you who want to give to that charity. It should not be tax dollars that are used to fund the mission. And I just want to give everybody just a brief example of what has been going on in council. There hasn't been any discussion on this at all. There really has not. John Anisco and I made comments on Tuesday. And after our comments, do you know what happened? there was silence. Silence. Not one matter of discussion was raised. So what does that tell you? That tells you that this isn't a matter to be discussed. It has never been discussed. It's something that gets renewed every 5 years. Now, what happened is that the mayor asked for a motion to suspend the third reading of this resolution. I want that to sink in. And Dave Young made that motion. Scott Broom seconded that motion with no discussion on the issue. That is what's going on in council. So again, I'm going to say, I don't object to the Conservancy. I object with how they're funded. John?
We got a microphone here for Councilman Anusko.
Is,
One thing before I go. I'm a voter here, okay? I'm a voter here. Let me decide whether or not we get the money or not. We do that. Let me.
Thank you.
Let me decide, okay? If the people in this room don't want to do it, okay? They'll reject it. Put the damn thing on the ballot. I don't know who the hell you think you are that you say you're not even gonna let it go on the ballot.
Okay.
It really makes me angry. I love Gates Mills. I love what we have in this village. I love it. And you know what? If people don't want to pay the tax, they won't. They'll vote against it. Period, end of story.
All right, let's stay polite and civil, please. All right, Councilman, do you wish to speak next? John? Okay. Identify yourself, please.
Sure. Councilman John Onesko. I am the person who everybody thinks I'm against conservation, and I will tell you my family, fact, we give to conservation all the time. Love Gates Mills, love everything I've heard up here. What I am for is information. We started this process with the committee in February being chartered with giving us information. And as a new council member, I said, this is great. I just want information. I want to make sure that my vote is for something where I have that information. What should have started in May, without a doubt, and had deliberate and thoughtful discussions, what should have started there, started 60 days before a measure would have to be passed as an emergency measure. That's not right. That's not how I do business. I want to make sure that I have enough information to give to the people so that you can vote, but you know what you're, oh, he just left. So you can vote, but you know what you're voting for. In a perfect world, I would want us to say, we're going to figure out what that split is going to be with the Land Conservancy. And then I just want that in the levy so that people who are new to the community, like myself, new 10 years, but people who are new to the community know I'm going to vote for a levy that has this split. And we can do that. I have actually checked with the law director and everything. We can actually figure out what that's going to be ahead of time, educate the voters, put it in the levy, and then let the voters decide. But a levy without the information is just something that we always do. And I would much rather have that verbiage ahead of time so people understand what we're going to spend the money on.
Those meetings that started in May, they were all open door. Anyone could come to those to understand what was being said and told.
But we didn't, I have no information right now. There's no public information right now on how the split's going to go. There is a report that was read at the last council meeting, but it's not yet been posted to the public. It was promised the day after, Steve, and it's not there.
Is that a public document that should be available at this point, Mayor?
It's a public document. Anybody that wants it, send me an email and I'll send it to you.
Why did you say that you were going to post it the next day in the last meeting?
Honestly, I didn't know until somebody brought to my attention at about 2 o'clock that it wasn't posted. So we'll see why it wasn't posted. And anyone that wants the report, send me your email address and we'll mail it to you tomorrow morning. Scott.
Okay, my name is Scott Broom, council person and councilman, can I say that? So, so if everyone, I don't want anyone to get angry at John. John is bringing out a discussion, and I think I remarked that, well, it'll give us a chance to talk about this and air it out. I probably guess most people know my position on this, but it's caused me to think about this a little bit, and it's caused me to think about it a lot. And you know, what's the structure that we have here? So we have a levy. It gives the voters a chance to vote on it, and it sort of provides a check and a balance. We have our village government, and we have an independent organization, the Gates Mills Land Conservancy. And so the levy gives a measure of a check and a balance. The village, if they think the Land Conservancy has gone off the deep end, the village could say, hey, guys, you know, we don't want to give you any more money. You're going the wrong direction. By the same token, if the Land Conservancy thought the village was going off the deep end, they could say, hey, guys, you could keep your money. We're going to do our own thing. Most importantly, the levy, and I think as we just heard from one voter, the levy gives the voters a chance to weigh in on the whole thing. I took a look to see how these agreements went in the past, and in some years where the levy was on the ballot, the agreement was signed in advance, and there's a few years where it was signed after. Having it in advance is not a bad thing. John's probably right about that, so the people know what the proposed levy split is. And I think what you're hearing here is why there's a split. I think that's what people are trying to say here is why there's a split. So the structure, there's a reason for the structure. You know, there's a lot of other arguments that are being made that the Conservancy hurts the tax base, that it takes properties off the tax rolls. Well, it enhances the value of the other properties in the village. I've not done a mathematical equation of that, and some things are, quite frankly, more important than mathematics. I think that's probably a wash, and with benefits. That there's no plan by the Gates Mills Land Conservancy. The Gates Mills Land Conservancy has long had a plan on land acquisitions and trying to assemble parcels that get above a 60-acre level, contiguous acres, because you have a much higher conservation value once you hit 60 acres. And there's a central corridor, there's things along the river. Those have always been things that have been of great interest to the Land Conservancy. And just lest anyone think that the Land Conservancy just buys anything, the number of times it passes on real estate exceed the number of times.
Councilman, I believe the Land Conservancy will have an opportunity the second half to speak for itself.
Okay. So then some have said, well, we should let the Western Reserve Land Conservancy take over the Gates Mills Land Conservancy. And with no bad intent to the Western Reserve Land Conservancy, they are an outstanding organization, but they have a different remit than the Gates Mills Land Conservancy. If you look on their website, the first thing you see, there's a tab for land for sale. And the Gates Mills Land Conservancy is an organization made by Gates Mills residents, for Gates Mills residents, and run by Gates Mills residents. It's for the village. And so John asked me about how did this come about? And I thought to myself, well, it had to do with Emily Newman passing away and some properties and people saying, oh, the village is going to change. Steve said, and Steve was closer to this than I was at the time, that it was different. But I started researching, and you know, the village has one heck of a history of preserving its properties. There's a book written by Bill Henderson, who was a service director here, lived here for many, many years. It was written in 1970. And I bet you didn't know that during the WPA, so that's right after the Depression, 1934 to 39, that more than 8,000 trees were planted in the village of Gates Mills. 3,000 shrubs and 6,000 vines. Now, I think these guys will say we should have planted any of those vines. But, but that was done with both federal tax dollars and Village of Gates Mills funds to the tune back then of $122,000. Now, I don't know what you think about how much money that is in 1934, 39. In 1952 to 1958, the Gates Mills Improvement Society planted 100 evergreens along River Road to screen what was the dump on River Road there, north of Mayfield. The Garden Club sponsored many plantings, and the Dogwood Association, which is no longer, which was really just paid for by Crispin Oglebay, planted 100 dogwoods along Mayfield Road and River Road. And in 1952 to 59, Courtney Burton paid $11,000 to have maple trees planted all over. This has been a long-standing thing. And if you read what Bill Henderson wrote about keeping the village the way it is and how hard the villagers have worked to keep it, it didn't get this pretty because we did nothing. It got this way because people worked hard. The Metro Parks, I don't mean to cast any aspersions on the Metro Parks. I bet you didn't know in 1940 they wanted to put a Metro Park roadway and connect the North and the South Chagrin reservations. The village sued to stop it, went all the way to the Ohio Supreme Court at great expense to the village, and won. At that time, people began donating or selling properties along the river to the Village Parks Department, which as of 1970 had 295 acres. That's how the village ended up with all that land, is the people in the village wanted to keep the village the village. And so this has been a thing that's been going on a long time. When you look around and you say, this place is beautiful, it is. And it is because the people have worked at it, they've put in together to do it. And I think it's something worth doing.
Mayor, quick question. One of is, I had it, and one of the other pre-submitted questions asked about it too. I watched the last council meeting online, and could you explain your strategy there in attempting to bypass the third reading of this to move it ahead?
I can. In preparation for the meetings, I have an agenda, and then I have a second agenda that is done for me that has some notes on how to proceed, because I'm trying to run the meeting, understand what's happening, and keep it procedurally going. And on the notes that I had prepared ahead of time, I wrote down, and this would have been typed and done a couple days ahead of time, suspend the rules, because I thought that's what we would do. And so that was typed on my agenda. Flip to the next page. Right before the meeting, we got a phone call that we were thankful to get, and went into an executive session to be able to seek some legal advice to be able to respond back to that phone call. And frankly, I was preoccupied at the time and was concerned about how I explained that. It was all what I believe good news, but it was further distracted me from the meeting. So when I got back, I looked at my notes on my agenda, and it said suspend the rules. And so I called for suspending the rules. So that is frankly what happened. I apologize to Karen at the time for not, after the meeting, I should say, after I went back and realized what I had done. And that's the answer.
Okay, we're going to take a timeout just a second. Let's get one more question from the lovely lady in back.
Use this one. Anyhow, my name's Chris Riley. I have a conservancy easement on my property. I'm totally pro conservancy. I came in here with my hand raised as undecided. But I have to tell you, I totally disagree with what's going on tonight. I came here to hear about the pros and cons of the levy. I've always voted for the levy, but after 35 years, I think we are entitled to know how much it costs the village, if there are any other needs for the money, whether the split is equitable. I didn't want to hear about invasive species. I know about invasive species. I think it's an incredibly important thing. But this forum did not answer anything that was important to me
All right,
as
well,
an
we
undecided.
have another hour. We have another hour, and hopefully we will
I
get to,
think I'll-
get to more relevant subject matter, or at least more important subject matter. To,
We'll see how it goes.
What like of you, what the audience would like to hear. All right, one last one right here. Like, hold off. There you go.
My name is Phil Campanella. I've been a resident of Gates Mills since 1976. My question is to the panel. Is there a better way than the Gates Mills Land Conservancy that is a 501c3 charitable organization that is composed of members of the village, that is funded by donations and funded by the levy? Can you suggest a better way either tonight, or can you send that information to the Conservancy? I'm a member of the Conservancy, and I'm also a board member for the last 2 years. Thank you.
I think we're going to get into that up to our elbows in the second half here. I think maybe that's a little too profound. Let's just take a timeout now. Stretch your legs, make a pit stop, process what you've heard, and let's come back and try to focus on the answers that you'd like to get. We'll reconvene in 5 minutes. seats and look to resume the conversation.
Folks, let's get back in our seats so we can continue on the conversation.
Yeah. Okay, folks, back in your seat. All right, let's get everybody back in place and try to reconvene here. As you can see, we've had a change in the cast of characters up here at the experts table. So we are going to hear now from the Gates Mills Land Conservancy, the main player in all of this, and we're going to hear from Jamie Carricker, the president of the Conservancy, and Nat Smith, the vice president, who are going to talk about its work and their responsibilities and what they do for fundraising. And I think they have detected that there's a restlessness in the audience and wants to get a particular focus on discussion. So I've asked them to make this less of a report card and a history lesson so we can do that. All right. So we will first hear from Jamie Carricker.
Thank you. I do have a couple slides. I'm a marketing guy, has pictures. None of them are stock. So, there is only a couple of those, so I promise it'll go quick. But thank you everybody for coming. I mean, it's so great to see an awesome crowd like this. We always appreciate the opportunity to speak to the community, answer questions, share information. So thank you. And I would just mention that we do have an annual meeting coming up in October, and we would love to see you all there. I will not be doing the same presentation again, so it'll be new. So just want to walk through a couple things really quick. Who we are. So just to start, we're Gates Mills Land Conservancy is an independent nonprofit. We were started by village residents in 1988. We're accredited by the Land Trust Accreditation Commission and a member of the Land Trust Alliance, which is a national association of land trusts. Western Reserve Land Conservancy is another member. It's the organization that leads and advises land conservancies. Our mission is to protect the meadows, forests, wetlands, and streams within Gates Mills, which are the cornerstone of our gorgeous and ecologically important Chagrin Valley. And I just put a couple maps up here. You have here on the left is Gates Mills. That includes conservancy properties that have been protected, but also other village properties, metro parks. And on the right here is a map we worked on with Western Reserve Land Conservancy with their map makers. The red is land that's been protected by Gates Mills Land Conservancy. And then the other stuff is the properties that have been protected throughout the Chagrin Valley, just to show our regional impact and how we all work together and fit into the same mission. Our board is all volunteers. There's 15 of us. We're all Gates Mills residents, 5 of which are appointed by the mayor. And we think that creates an additional layer of accountability and partnership with the village. It's a unique governing structure that we really value, and think it has worked well. We meet rigorous standards for governance, financial accountability, and perpetual stewardship. We obviously follow all state, federal laws, and I'll talk about some of that in a second. But just some quick facts. The Gates Mills Land Conservancy has preserved 756 acres of forests, meadows, wetlands, and streams within Gates Mills through fee-owned acquisitions, conservation easements, and deed restrictions. That's about 13% of all acreage in the village. My notes are sticking together. We've achieved all these protections at an average cost of around $9,700 per acre, which is a really good return on investment when you consider these days 5-acre lot is about $400,000 to $500,000. So we think that the ROI has been really strong over the last few decades that we've worked on this. And then lastly, I would just point out that more than 70% of the village is not protected. There are dozens of properties above 10 acres that if they were lost, would be substantial loss of tree cover, wildlife habitat, and scenic vistas that we all enjoy. So getting to the meat of the matter. What do we do with levy funds? So I want to walk through this pretty specifically in terms of conservation and stewardship. So first, starting with conservation, we purchase land to own, and we partner with landowners to conserve land that they own. That's the meat of it. When evaluating new properties, we look at a number of really strict criteria before we move forward. That includes their conservation value and their market value. So how do we look at that? First, we prioritize properties that have unique natural features such as size, habitat, impact on watersheds, proximity to other preserved properties, and that's key. We're always looking for how we're going to build on what we already have to kind of expand. And as Scott said a second ago, growing acreage in compact spaces, 60 acres more, that really compacts that environmental value, and it's also easier to manage. We partner with landowners who believe in conservation. That's also important. We're always looking for partners, and folks come and see us, and that's how we often find out about opportunities. Someone says, I think this is important for me to preserve this for legacy, or I value conservation. That's how we make those connections. But it's important to note that we cannot spend any more than the appraised value on any purchase. So that is also why it's important that we meet people who value conservation when they're considering selling land, because we have that limit. In addition, we are obligated to inspect yearly every property we own or hold an easement on to make sure that there's no unapproved construction, dumping, or other harmful practices taking place. That's our responsibility that we have to do every year, every single property. We walk those acres to make sure that is true. And then lastly, we follow strict guidelines and provide documentation to the Land Trust Accrediting Commission. We get every 5 years we get an audit on all of our paperwork. They read our minutes, they read our financial reports, they read our submissions to various governmental bodies to make sure that we're meeting the obligations there. And then of course we also report to Cuyahoga County, State of Ohio, and IRS. So we have a lot of accountability, and we appreciate that. Stewardship is also a vital effort that we've been doing increasingly. And up here you have some pictures of what that looks like. It's a fast-growing part of what we do. We believe that having a local land conservancy that's staffed by volunteers who are your neighbors makes us more accountable, more cost-effective, and more responsive than any alternative to preserving land in the village. We maintain every parcel we own, which includes tending damaged or downed trees, for public safety, of course, removing invasive plants, adding new native plants, repairing fences, mowing, and other routine maintenance. We're there, to look at those things and to work on them. So we're right here. We're always working on that. Going back to the initial session, we are proud to partner with the village's tree canopy committee, which started the last couple of years. Our Merkel and LeConte properties, which are on River Road, just south of Mayfield Road, are part of the pilot. We were really excited about the progress there, and we've expanded that to other properties that we own using our own funds to do that. And it's something that we see a lot of value in, and we're continuing to invest in, and that's going to be a focus going forward. All that said, we use these learnings to educate the community. We use these learnings to partner with other neighbors who are nearby to improve what they have and also marshal our resources together. Been a lot of questions about fundraising and finance, and we are happy to talk about those. It's an important topic. Over the last 5 years, we fundraised about $422,000 from private sources, which is a 220% increase over the previous 5 years. We were honored with 2 exceptional donations of $100,000, each from Dan Kish and the family of Bonnie Humphrey. Dan and Bonnie shared a love for this community and a wish for what they enjoyed during their lives to be passed on. We're honored by their generosity, and I will say that these donations were record-breaking. These were immense for us. We were really excited, and we would love to see that continue. Our annual fundraising budget target is about $40,000, which we receive from roughly 150 donors a year. Vast majority of those are villagers. Once in a while, we get someone from outside our borders, but almost everybody is a villager. That's a 48% increase over the previous 5 years. those funds are used to cover our daily business operations, like our internet bills, producing events like our annual meeting, mailing fundraising materials, everything that makes our business go, we leverage those funds. In addition, our our efforts are led by volunteers with 40+ years of experience leading fundraising for organizations like the Conservancy for the Cuyahoga Valley National Park, Western Reserve Land Conservancy, and Lakeview Cemetery. And those volunteers, like Leah Whidden, have provided so much value and helped us professionalize our fundraising efforts, and we've really seen the benefits. We send 2 mailings a year to every resident to raise funds, and we also leverage relationships across the village to meet new donors. We're always looking for new folks, so if you know anybody, please put us in touch. We show our value and communicate through 3 times annual newsletters, monthly pink sheet articles. We just launched a new website early in the year, events throughout the year, and briefings to Village Council. It's important to note, though, that we are looking for funds outside of the village. We partner with a lot of the organizations you saw here earlier, Western Reserve Land Conservancy, Chagrin River Watershed Partners, ODNR, et cetera, to find additional sources of revenue that can support this work from local, state, and at the local, state, and national level. A few examples. Over the last several years, we've been awarded private grant funding to treat the invasive tree of heaven on our properties. If you know about the tree of heaven, it is the host plant of the spotted lanternfly, which is all over Cleveland. You go to a ball game, it's going to be on your shoes. We're going after that. That is a tenacious plant. And over the last several years, we've made progress, but we're still not done. We still got a lot to do. So we've gotten grant funding for that. We've been really excited about that. This spring, we also partnered with Holden on a grant request to Cornell University to request funding for invasive plant removal and forestry services to improve bird habitat on our Clark and Sherman Road preserves. Unfortunately, we're not awarded those funds, but we were recommended that we submit again, and we will do that, and we look forward to working with Holden on that. Also, this year, we submitted funding requests to the federal government through the EQIP program to fund some of the services that were mentioned a little bit ago. We partnered with some of our neighbors, private residents who had land around us to maximize that impact. Unfortunately, again, we did not get that funding, and it was recommended we apply again next year, which we are going to do. But I would say, as you can see, that fundraising is essential, but it takes time and it's hard work, and it's not guaranteed. We know it's important, and we're continuing to work hard on it, and that's going to be something we commit to continuing to grow as we go forward. Lastly, I would just want to hit on finances, because this is an important question that people bring up, and we are committed to being transparent on this topic. We receive roughly $142,500 a year from levy funding, which is about 50% of the levy. That's past 5 years. That's what we get. We currently hold approximately $240,000 in unspent levy funds. I would say over the last 5 years, well, one thing I would point out, levy funds are only used on acquisitions, conservation easements, and stewardship. All the other things you might think that we would do, we do not pay for from levy funds. It's all focused on those 3 things. Over the last 5 years, we spent around $627,000 on levy funds from the previous 5 years and that we had from before. For the acquisition of the K. Perkins Preserve, which is on Mayfield Road as you head west towards Mayfield Heights, as well as finalizing or completing the purchase of the 35-acre Clark Preserve on Sherman Road. And then we also have conduct ongoing stewardship on all of our properties. Our cash reserves are $990,000. Our agreement with the village requires us to hold $700,000 in cash reserves by the end of 2026, which, as you can see, we're on track to achieve. After hearing how much we've achieved over the last 5 years, it's understandable that folks may ask why we should continue the conservation levy. From my perspective, I think the answer is there's more work to do. I know everyone in this room clearly wants to continue to keep Gates Mills beautiful and keep it green. In fact, as we mentioned earlier, the community said so in the comprehensive plan that was of prime importance. But that doesn't just happen because we want it to. We have to invest in the support of the community. We have to have passionate volunteers, and we have to have stable funding. Over the last 5 years, we've drastically expanded our focus on stewardship and fundraising, 2 things that were mentioned in the last levy agreement that we have really committed to doing. We've also worked with partners across the region to help us maximize what we're doing. This is important and we're going to keep doing it. But tending the forests and meadows and streams of our community require multi-year commitments and planning. Levy funding provides the stability needed to help us make those commitments. We're laser focused on increasing fundraising impact, and we're focused on reaching more local donors and outside of the region donors to help us maximize what we are able to do. When we're able to combine stable levy funding with revenue generated from fundraising, we can do even more for the community. And I think that's the important thing that we want to get across, is that we can do more. Without stable levy funding, it's much harder for us to protect new properties or commit to long-term, large-scale stewardship initiatives. So from our point of view, we believe we've achieved a remarkable success over the last 5 years and also the years since 1988. We've done it together, and we continue to invest in this work because we believe it benefits us all in the years ahead. So that's a quick overview. I would just say we would love to keep in touch with you all. We have our website, has our email address, our phone number. You have questions after this meeting, come talk to us. We're happy to answer those.
All right. Thank you for that thorough and covered most of the bases report card there, Steve. So what is the average cost to the typical homeowner in Gates Mills, again, just to stress that point?
Well, I believe I always get this. The math is screwy. It's $100 per $100,000 of assessed value. Is that correct? It's a 1 mil levy.
I mean, I think, wasn't there a published figure said $35 per?
Right. Well, I did the math wrong there. I misread the formula. So it was more than that. It's 100. So it's less, or still not huge, but it's.
All right.
I did the math incorrect.
All right. We'll get back to audience questions here. A couple of quick show of hands things. How many think that this levy is a hardship for a large number of people in Gates Mills? How many of you think it's regarded by many as just sort of a extra cost of living here and keeping the place extra nice the way everybody likes it, something to be expected? Okay. And how many of you think you're not getting enough bang for the buck, or that GMLC is not delivering, is underperforming in some respects? How many of you are not happy with the work that it's doing? All right. Okay. Microphones. All right. Gentleman in the white polo shirt here. Let's have all right. Again, identify yourself and what your role in this is.
Okay, Jerry Bowens. I've been a resident of Jan and I, my wife, have been a resident here since 1980. In the 80s, in the 90s, and 2000, early 2000, I was heavily involved with the Land Conservancy and with the Planning and Zoning Board, which kind of the problems tend to mix back and forth. I want to make a couple of points. I went and there's a sense by some that the village or the Land Conservancy has got all the land they need. So I went and checked around the country at really first-class, A+ communities that might be like Gates Mills. One was Chappaqua in Brewster in Westchester County. 33% of their land is covered by conservancy easements. And they said, well, how about Bucks County outside of Philadelphia? Nice place, right? 33% of their land is covered by conservancy easements. I said, well, how about the Hamptons, the various townships? 30% of their land is covered by conservancies. So then I reached out, went west, Santa Barbara, 50% of the land is covered by conservancy. So we're kind of conservative in terms of what our vision here is. Don't know what the right number is for Gates Mills, but I think there's universal belief that the outcome, which is the maintenance of what we like about the village, is there. It's working. Just another point. I think the Land Conservancy is being much too modest about how they should be bragging about what the Land Conservancy in Gates Mills is. They have won 2 national awards, the highest levels of excellence, essentially Nobel Prize for land conservancies, 2 of them. And it's a volunteer organization, essentially running no overhead. It's almost, it's just hard to grasp how.
Well, we heard some of the experts say that other communities are green with envy, right?
Well, okay, so what, it ain't broken. Why are we trying to fix it? You know, one more point. It's great when you have major contributors to a community, but there's another aspect of having a levy where everybody gets to vote, and when they walk into the voting booth, they're going to make a decision, yes or no. But when they say yes, they essentially are making a pledge that they're in the game, that they're a supporter of the environment, of the beauty of this valley, and that's really important. It may be more important than one individual guy or girl or family giving us lots of money, although we not turn it down. Incidentally, last point. Now let's sit down. Our good friends at the Western Reserve, and they are good friends of ours, spend $750,000 a year in fundraising. We spend essentially nothing. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Next speaker.
Hi,
Right.
I'm Rich Greco. I've been a resident of the community for about 20 years. My wife is on the council, and I'm not usually one to get involved in local politics, but when I started looking into the relationship between the village and the levy and the Land Conservancy, I was surprised by some of what I found. I did some research. There's 1,300 land trusts in the United States. About 1,000 of them, 950, are part of the Land Trust Alliance. And based on the information that I was able to obtain, exactly one of those organizations has a taxpayer-supported levy. There's no other organization that shows up in the research that has dedicated taxpayer funds with no accountability. Scott talked about checks and balances, but they're absent here. There are no guardrails. The land trust, the Gates Mills Land Trust gets to do what it wants. It's run by a group of volunteers, and we put our faith in those volunteers that they're going to do the right thing. But there are no guardrails. No one says what's the right amount. Mr. Bohink says, 33% of Westchester County is conserved. Well, almost 30% of Gates Mills is conserved. When you add the Metro Parks land, the Land Conservancy's land, those are clearly the same thing. The difference being that the Metro Parks allows the public to use the land, and the Land Conservancy, I understand, does not. It's walled off from use, and perhaps that's how it should be. But it's a public charity. It should be raising money from the public, not from the taxpayers. There should be guardrails in place that dictate how they can spend the money. We should have approval and oversight into their goals and their objectives. They should be reporting to us routinely and regularly. I looked up just now on how many times the Land Conservancy has published an article in the Pink Sheets in the last 3 years. It's about 7 times. That's not what you want your tax money to be spent on, I believe. I have no objections to the levy. The levy's doing good work. I love the fact that we're digging in on the environmental issues. I'm an Eagle Scout. I've been involved in conservation and environmental issues my entire life. But it's not right to turn public money over to a private charity. And we should be keeping that in mind.
Right.
That's
But this is not a private, I mean, this, okay.
No, it's a private charity.
It's a private charity, but it's a special relationship that's been created where they're codependent upon each other. It's not
Public
like,
money,
it's not like a charity for
Tom,
miniature aardvarks preservation society.
Tom, public money is spent through open meetings where the public is invited to debate it. The Land Conservancy doesn't have to follow the sunshine rules.
Okay.
They don't have to have an audit. They don't have to have any oversight. They can choose to do those things, but it isn't a requirement. All right, that's enough. I'm gonna get off my
So
soapbox.
you are a yes or no vote? Okay. All right, just trying to
Hey, Tom.
see if I could sort that out a little bit. All right. Mayor, you have any remarks about,
Yeah, I'd like to kind of respond to the comments that were just recently made. My background, my name's Nathaniel Smith. As it relates to conservation, I was past president of the Cleveland Museum of Natural History. I've served as their executive on their Natural Areas Committee for over a decade. I've been on the Land Conservancy for probably 15 or 20 years. I haven't counted the numbers. I've been a resident of Gates Mills off and on since 1968. So that's who I am. And I'd like to talk a little bit about the village's conservancy relationship with Gates Mills Land Conservancy, that partnership. It's been in existence for 35 years, and it was established in 1991 after the Conservancy had been in existence for 3 years. And what happened at that time was the leadership of the village determined that if there wasn't a reliable funding source for the Conservancy, the mission of preserving the natural habitat in Gates Mills would not be successful. So from the standpoint of why the conservation levy was established, it was established, in fact, to support the Gates Mills Land Conservancy. Now, the comment that there is no other organization in the country other than Gates Mills that uses tax money is probably factually completely untrue. Most conservation in this country is a combination of public and private ownership, private donations, whether it's done with a park district or a conservation organization such as ours, or metro parks, or a government entity that they set up within the government. Most of the time, conservation is achieved with a combination of public funding and private donations. And what I want you to understand is that when you are buying land, it's an opportunistic endeavor. We have a list of properties that we'd love to be able to preserve, but we cannot preserve those unless they come on the market. And when they come on the market, the process of getting a deal done is extremely difficult if you have to go through the process of bringing it up in a public debate with the council to get permission to do a transaction. So we have had many transactions where we're looking at a developer being our competitor. And we don't want to be in a situation where we're publicly disclosing that information. Now, if the council wants more information, if they want more financial reporting, ask for it. Nobody from council has come to a single board meeting in my entire experience on the Conservancy. Nobody has asked to have financial reports every month. If you want financial reports, we give you financial reports. Nobody called Jamie or me at any point to talk about this upcoming levy. And I think that we have an organization that is available for the community if you ask. So I want to respond to a couple other things that were said last week, which are incorrect. There was some concern about the $700,000 so-called endowment and the implication that it wasn't being handled properly. That endowment target was established in the 2021 contract between the village and the Conservancy, and it was described in the contract as a fund balance. It was in fact a target that we would have $700,000 in cash at the end of 5 years, and that target included funds that we hadn't received yet. So it was not a formal endowment. It was designed to be a fundraising target. We will meet that target. We will be in a position at the end of this calendar year to establish a formal endowment. But the statement that it was not on the Form 990, which you report to the federal government, that we hadn't checked, we had an endowment, and that was wrong. Well, actually, that was right. We did not have an endowment, and we don't have one yet, but we will at the beginning of next year. Another statement that was made at the council meeting last week is that we don't do fundraising. And all I can say is that what Jamie listed to you is a lot of fundraising activities, 2 letters a year to every resident, 3 email newsletters every year, an article in the Pink Sheet every single month, a website where you can go and put a donation in 1 minute, and personal meetings with individuals who are interested in doing substantial bequests. So the accusation that we don't raise funds is absolutely wrong. And what I will tell this group and the rest of the citizens is if they cut the levy, if they don't continue that, the so-called endowment we have will be only enough to have a static organization. We're out of the business of buying land. We're out of the business of doing any work on invasives, and we will be an organization that simply monitors the land that we have. And if that's what people want, vote no on the continuation of this levy. And finally, I would say to the council, this is not your choice to decide whether the levy should be go forward or not. It's the choice of the voters. They've done it 7 times over the last 35 years. Let the voters decide. That's all I want to say.
All right, I have a, all right, I have a previously submitted question. Couldn't the village control the money and the Conservancy ask the village for money when it has a legitimate need? Why should the Conservancy control the purse strings?
You want me to respond to that?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Well, picture a situation where we are interested in a property and we have to go before council to debate the merits of the property, to debate whether the price is right, to get their approval to buy this particular parcel of land. That's a very cumbersome process. When the Conservancy has the cash in its bank, it can make those decisions quickly with a board of 15 people. We do not have to have a public discussion on that. And I can remember the last time I came before a public meeting and we were buying a piece of property, and the question that came from the audience was, well, how much are you paying? That's not the sort of thing we want to have in the Chagrin Valley Times. So there are hundreds of conservation organizations around the country. They all raise money to some extent from organizations like Clean Ohio. They all try to raise private funds. But in this small community, we have what, 2,000 homes in this community? We're a very small community. We're not 2,000 residents, I guess. We're not going to be able to raise the type of money that can buy a 5-acre parcel for $500,000 if we don't have that money sitting in our bank. It has to be ready to go. We have to have dry powder.
I've heard some discussion of it here, and there's also a previously submitted question. Did the Conservancy or a representative of the Conservancy tell the village in 2021 it would not ask for another renewal? Is that an apocryphal story or?
Absolutely not. There were certain members of council that would have liked to have no more renewals, but that was never the position of the Conservancy. And let me back up a little bit. Prior to 2021, every renewal of the levy was non-controversial. In 2021, the split between the village was changed from 95-5, with the 95 going to the Conservancy, to 50-50. And that was the point at which this whole levy issue became a political football. The Conservancy accepted the 50-50 because the opening offer was zero. So our feet were put to the fire, and it was, do you want to accept 50-50 or do you want to go to zero? A lot of us on the Conservancy board thinks it should go back to 95-5. On the other hand, the village is doing more with the funds than they used to, and we can live with 80-20 if that's what the village wants.
All right. Yes, young lady in the blue dress.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
I've been in the queue for quite a while now. I was the second one to put up my hand. I'm Michael Press. I live on County Line Road. I've been a resident here in Gates Mills for 48 years, which is probably longer than most of you in the audience, and probably longer than most of you on council. I've served on council from January of 22 through November of last year. I believe in a healthy debate on council. That's the democratic process. I agree with I commend Councilpersons Greco and Anisco for trying to start a debate. And as Councilman Greco said, the response was dead silence. Not surprising to me, I tried to change that for the 4 years I was on council with no success whatsoever. And it's the reason I didn't run again. There's been some misinformation spread that needs to be corrected, particularly at the July Council. In the late 80s, when the Land Conservancy was established, it was formed for two reasons. The first was conservation of important properties and preservation of important view sheds. But there was a second reason. The second reason was preventing unwanted development. I spent many a day on my County Line Road with my County Line Road neighbor, Tom Quintrell, on his back porch discussing the matter. Tom, of course, was the primary founder and the first president of the Gates Mills Land Conservancy. At the last council meeting, both the current president of the Gates Mills Land Conservancy and a council member who's been for years a member of the Conservancy Board denied that preventing unwanted development was ever an objective of the Land Conservancy. That's a patently false statement. In my mind, there's nothing wrong with using whatever tools we have to manage and control the development of our village. There's no point in not using that tool. Does conserving land take it off the tax rolls for future development forever? Indeed, it does. Is that bad? I don't think so. Gates Mills is what it is today largely because of the Land Conservancy's conservation of land. It's why we have the look and feel we have, and why buildable property sells now for over $100,000 an acre. Yes, we've paid a tax, but we've got the money back several times over in the value of our own properties. We're all of us beneficiaries of the past land conservation in this village. That leaves the question, is there more to do, or have we conserved enough land? I, for one, believe there's a need for more land conservation, and further, that the conservation levy is needed to help fund it. Voluntary contributions alone are not going to be enough. All residents benefit, and that's the justification for using a tax rather than relying upon solely voluntary contributions. One final thought. Given the 35-year history of the conservation levy passing by a significant plurality, it would be very wrong for council not to leave this matter up to the voters. Council should make whatever changes they wish to the levy. They can make whatever recommendations they want to the voters, but I would be dead set against them preventing it getting to the voters. Thank you.
Mayor, might this be a good time to concisely state the village's position on development? I mean, there are so many parcels out there that I'm sure developers are licking their chops over.
Well, I'm not sure the village has published any type of specific policy on development. I would say that in my years of this current role and going back to being treasurer of the village back in 1988 through about 1998, the village has never been against development. It only wants development to follow the rules, ordinances, and regulations that the village has set up. Going back to the late 80s and the early 90s, there were a number of regulations that were put in place, a number of ordinances put in place to essentially say, if you want to make large developments in the village, here is the way it has to be done. And those policies still exist today, and those policies have been followed for the last 35 years. It's not surprising that those were done at the same time, that there was a growth management plan that was put together by the village, and a number of ordinances, hillside ordinances, water ordinances, setback ordinances, to essentially say, this is the way we want the village to be and to look. So I don't know what Michael Press and Tom Quintrell discussed on their back porch back in about 1990. We'll take Michael for his word. Tom's passed away. But I think the village has always acted consistently to make sure the village, development of the village is the way the village ordinances have been specified, and that's it. We're getting to the end of the time, so let me talk about the 80-20 for a second, because that's something that people have brought up. Nat did a nice job explaining it used to be 95 and 5. Well, it was 95 and 5 since 1990 when it was first put in place, in 1991. And it was because the village ceded to the Land Conservancy this amount of money to be able to start doing what it needed to do, which was land acquisitions or easements or what have you. And the village had no skill to do that on a conservation basis. So the village kept 5% as essentially a placeholder to make sure that the responsibility was always known, that these monies first came to the village and then through the village went to the Land Conservancy or whatever other entity could execute its mission. As a result, the village for many years spent very little of its own money on conservation. If the tax amount was $100,000 and we kept 5%, that's $5,000. And we would use that for watershed partner dues or things along those lines, because the majority went to the Conservancy to do its job. And it did that for 25 or 30 years through acquisitions of land, through easements, through deed restrictions, through other kinds of things. That's why when someone says, why did they get 95%? Because they were essentially building what they've since created, the 750 acres of coverage. 4 years ago, I was not in this role, but I heard part of the debate. The zero debate ends up with 50-50. the village ends up with 50% of the funds. Frankly, we don't, when that was done, I was not in this role. And there wasn't a clear purpose for what we would do with our 50%. It was almost, we didn't want them to get 95, so we'll keep 50. And there was the battle. So we've kept that 50%, and we've used it for some certain things. I think the comment was made before, the $450,000 that's in there, there's about $100,000 that's already earmarked and will be spent for invasives and other kinds of things that have already been programmatically set. The other reason the money was in there is at that time, there was concern that the culvert under Mayfield Road, which had been crushed over 30, 40 years of use and lack of repair, would require somewhere north of $500,000 to fix the culvert. And nobody had $500,000 sitting around. And the village made the point, I think, that, geez, since that's stormwater, we can use some of that money to fix the culvert. And that was part of the debate too. Well, the culvert's gotten fixed, and we haven't spent a dollar of that money. And so it sits there in the village treasury to be used for other kinds of things. We didn't spend the money for a few reasons. Number one, we fixed the culvert in a different manner. We took advantage of a contractor who had equipment and manpower that in the months of January and February was willing to deploy that on Mayfield Road Hill and dig underneath the Mayfield Road east path up the hill. He had the equipment. The crew would have otherwise been laid off. The equipment would have sat there in the wintertime. We were able to get the culvert fixed for, I think, $375,000 versus what was north of $500,000. We also used federal money that we were able to get through both the federal grant and through a supplemental county grant that we applied for. So using alternate money essentially saved the village $350,000 to $400,000. And we got a culvert, and anybody that's driven on that intersection in the last 3 years has not seen a flood, which we used to have a little bathing pool at the bottom of Mayfield and 322. So that money is available, and we can do other things with it. We've talked about what we've been doing for the village. We've got an invasives program that's quite active. We have other things that have been identified. Importantly, what we did is we sat down with the other members, and over the last 6 to 8 weeks, we allocated who is best suited in 2027 going forward to tackle what projects. And we'll let the money follow the people that are responsible for the projects. The Land Conservancy is best able, with the team of people that you just saw here today, to handle all the invasive projects that the village has. Some of those are our properties, some of them are their properties. We'll pay for our properties, village-owned properties. They'll pay for their properties. So we're using part of the Land Conservancy dollars to pay for the invasive removal and remediation on our existing properties. 4 pilots last year and several projects going forward. When we did that, the dollars turned out to be roughly 80% of the dollars, and the work would be done by the Conservancy. And therefore, that's how the 80% allocation came to be. The other 20% of the dollars would be spent by the village on projects and things that it has for its village-owned property. At the Arboretum, we've taken care of all the invasives. We're in year 3 of that program. We also have a growth management plan for the Arboretum and for Feller Field. We've contracted with the forester to take out some of the dead and dying trees that are in the Arboretum so that some growth could be achieved in the sunshine. And when we plant the flowers next year, about 2,000 bulbs donated by the Garden Club, there'll be some chance to have some air and some sunlight on the flowers. So there's projects that go on within the village that are not land conservancy, that are conservation projects or they're improvement projects, but they don't necessarily involve the Gates Mills Land Conservancy, but they can use conservation funds. That's how the 80-20 came to be. John.
Well, I believe we have reached the witching hour here of 8 o'clock, and I want to thank you. You still have a question? Then, all right, stand up, stand up.
Beginning. I just want, is there some place we can get the information from both the Land Conservancy and the city about the total dollars from the 50-50 split that went to each, where that money was spent, and where it's sitting right now. I just want to see an accounting of it.
Sure.
Because saying, just hearing where we've decided the 80/20 is more appropriate, I'm sorry, I'd rather see a little bit more information about that
We'd be happy,
before that decision is made.
we'd be happy to show you how the 80/20 came to be. Those tasks and those responsibilities have been laid out and presented to the Land Conservancy Board, which agrees with them. And they've been
But
presented.
I'd also like to see the accounting of the levy funds since the last renewal and where they're sitting and what they were spent on.
That's fine. We can,
Because it sounds to me, and I am fully supportive, and I applaud everybody that's worked on the conservation with the Land Conservancy, with the city, and with all the partners. And I've come to almost every meeting related to this. But I am concerned that the city's not going to have enough funds going forward to do everything that needs to be done related to conservation based on what we're hearing about what's necessary. So I want to make sure that I understand as a voter and a taxpayer that that allocation is going to ensure that the city's going to have enough funding to do what needs to be done.
okay. So we
So
will,
that's
well,
my question.
in the next,
And the other question I have is, I fully support putting the levy on the ballot. If the levy is put on the ballot, does that indicate that there's an 80/20 split? Because that's the impression I got from listening to the city council meeting last week.
the 80/20 split has to be approved by council.
But if so the ballot initiative, the ballot vote is just for
I believe the
the
ballot, I
levy
believe the vote,
itself.
put
It
it on the
doesn't
ballot.
indicate any kind of split.
It just says put it on the ballot question, puts it on the ballot without specification of the 80/20,
Okay.
okay?
Okay.
And it just says then the citizens will decide. In the intervening period of time between when it's on the ballot and November 4th, people will decide if they want 80/20 or if they want some other split. Council will have that discussion.
All right, we're going to overtime. 2 council members here, brief.
Better explain why we're not able to change the exact language. And John says we can. But at least the way it's always been done, the ballot language is levy, yes or no. And then there was always a separate contract for the split. And that's why Steve wanted to have the town hall tonight, that people know that the split under consideration is 80/20 before the measure gets on the ballot.
Councilman Anuska, do you have something to say?
Too clear.
All right, wait a minute. Sir, quiet.
And they don't know. It hasn't gone to council and it takes 3 readings. It won't be there before it's on the ballot.
Just 2 corrections. One, Mr. Smith, you did say, and I realize that, please see it from my point of view, that I'm getting mixed information. Yeah, you had mentioned that nobody asked for any reports on the exact report that you wanted was made by, a request was made by council on July 14th. I'm not blaming anywhere you for not providing it, because I would never think to talk to you. I would only submit to Gates Mills itself. So council did ask for that. We haven't gotten that back yet. So there's information there. But I do want to make one clarification. On 2021-27, which is the resolution that you're currently operating under, throughout the levy period, in bold, the Land Conservancy shall maintain a minimum fund balance of $700,000 solely for the purpose of stewardship and defense activities. The obligations run throughout the levy period, which terminates on midnight on January 1st, 2027. There is probably what you're referring to is there is a language that says it wishes that the Land Conservancy would set up a fund that would operate it to run in perpetuity, but it's a wish, not a requirement. And those are the exact words. So just,
I'm not disagreeing with that. All I'm saying is that that included up to $500,000 of future levy funds, which we didn't have at the time.
oh, this is in the 2021 agreement.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about. So that 700,000 did not need to be cash in hand. It also
No, but
included,
I'm saying it also expires on January 1st, 2027. That's my only point is that
I see.
that's what I'm saying is that it's not permanent.
Yeah.
And I just didn't want people to think that it was permanent. It expires on 1/1 of 2027.
Could I, just for the record, the question, I don't know if she's still there. Oh, yeah, she is. We have about $240,000 in unspent levy funds presently. We spent roughly $627,000 over the last 5 years of levy funds. So we can provide more detail in terms of however the output should be presented, but those are the numbers. So just wanted to make sure we were sharing those.
Just so we're clear, Ms. Summer, I think what I'm going to hear you say, I think what I heard you say is that you want two pieces of information. Right? What's the basis of the 80-20 split so that you can satisfy yourself that there's enough money in the village portion of that to do the village things? Is that correct? And an accounting of the levy funds since the, whatever year that would be, 2022 or whatever that would be for the last 5 years. Will that satisfy the request?
Yes.
Okay,
Okay.
okay.
My split explanation includes what the city's conservation requirements are going forward.
Well, it'll all be laid out there, and it's for council to sit down with that number and to discuss it and to debate it. And
That,
they may change it.
I don't know when they discuss that and when the 80-20 is going to get attached to the ballot.
It'll be discussed and debated well and extensively before November 4th.
All right. Well, the conversation is going to go on and on and on. I want to commend you all for showing up tonight and being part of Democracy in Action, a thoughtful, animated discussion. And I hope you all feel that you got most of what you came to learn. And again, thanks for letting me be part of Democracy in Action. Yeah. Mayor.